Neuroplasticity is one of the most powerful scientific principles that proves we are not bound by the thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors we've inherited or repeated. It's the biological basis for personal growth and transformation. When it comes to wealth, many people unconsciously carry deeply embedded beliefs such as money is hard to earn, I'm just not good with finances, or rich people are greedy. These ideas aren't facts. They are neural circuits, habits of thought built through repetition and emotional intensity. The good news is that the brain can change. It's constantly reshaping itself in response to what we think, feel, and do. This phenomenon is known as neuroplasticity. It means that you can literally rewire your brain to adopt a mindset and behaviors that attract wealth, success, and abundance. But the key is intentionality. Just as negative beliefs about money were formed over time, positive, empowering beliefs must be formed through conscious, repeated effort. When you think a thought, such as, I'm building wealth daily, you activate a specific network of neurons. If that thought is repeated consistently, especially with emotion, those neurons fire together more often, and according to Hebb's law, neurons that fire together wire together. Over time, these networks become more efficient, and the thought becomes easier to access. What was once a forced affirmation becomes a natural way of thinking. This is why daily mental conditioning is so important. Repeating empowering beliefs, visualizing your financial success, and aligning your behavior with your goals all contribute to reshaping your neural architecture. In practical terms, neuroplasticity allows you to go from seeing wealth as distant or unattainable to recognizing it as something you're actively creating. It's important to understand that this rewiring isn't just cognitive, it's emotional and physiological as well. Emotions act as amplifiers of neural change. When you pair a thought like, I deserve financial freedom, with strong emotion, confidence, excitement, gratitude, you make it far more likely to stick. So it's not enough to say the words passively, you must feel them, believe them, embody them. That's when the rewiring really begins to take root. Over time, your brain becomes more sensitive to opportunities, more resilient to setbacks, and more aligned with growth-oriented behaviors. Of course, this process requires consistency. You don't go to the gym once and expect to build muscle. The same applies to training your mind. Daily rituals, like writing in a wealth-focused journal, listening to empowering audio content, visualizing your ideal financial future, and practicing self-talk that aligns with abundance, compound over time. Each act reinforces the new neural pathways, strengthening your identity as someone who attracts, creates, and multiplies wealth. This isn't about pretending you're rich or ignoring reality. It's about reshaping your perception so your actions and attention naturally support the creation of wealth. Neuroplasticity also explains why mindset shifts precede behavior shifts. People often try to change their financial situation by jumping into action, starting a side hustle, investing, budgeting. While these are important, they're not sustainable if your mind is still wired for fear, scarcity, or failure. If your brain is conditioned to think, I always mess up with money, it will subconsciously steer you back to familiar outcomes even when you try something new. That's why inner transformation must lead outer transformation. Rewire your brain, and the actions follow more easily. This is how successful people continue to level up. They've trained their minds to see growth as inevitable, not optional. Ultimately, training your brain for wealth is not about being lucky or delusional or obsessed. It's about using neuroscience to your advantage. Your brain is plastic. It responds to repetition, emotion, and intention. If you take control of your mental patterns, you take control of your future. Wealth is a skill. And like any skill, it starts in the mind. The human brain is equipped with a filtering system known as the reticular activating system, or RAS, and it plays a vital role in determining what information you become consciously aware of. While the brain is bombarded with millions of stimuli every second, the RAS acts like a gatekeeper, allowing only the information that aligns with your current beliefs, goals, and focus to pass through. This system doesn't work based on what you want consciously. It works based on what your brain has learned to prioritize. When it comes to attracting wealth, this filtering system becomes incredibly important. If your subconscious mind has been conditioned to believe that opportunities are rare, that money is hard to come by, or that you don't deserve financial abundance, your RAS will filter the world accordingly. You'll miss potential partnerships, creative ideas, or solutions that could lead to income simply because your brain doesn't label them as relevant. On the other hand, when you begin to consciously reprogram your mind with thoughts of abundance, purpose, and clarity, the RAS starts tuning into opportunities that were always there, but previously invisible to you. This is why clarity is powerful. The more specific you are with your financial goals, the more you give your RAS a clear directive. If you simply say, I want more money, the brain has nothing concrete to lock onto. But if you say, I want to build a business that generates 10,000 per month and allows me to travel freely, now your RAS has something to work with. It begins scanning your environment for relevant conversations, books, strategies, and people. You start noticing patterns, industries, or insights that match your goal. This isn't mystical. This is how your attention system functions. The human brain cannot process everything, so it filters based on what you consistently think about and emotionally invest in. In short, what you focus on expands, not because the universe magically delivers it, but because your biology supports your focus with real-time awareness and pattern recognition. Visualization and journaling are two powerful tools to engage your RAS. When you visualize a specific outcome, seeing yourself succeeding in a business meeting, negotiating a deal, or checking your investment growth, you're telling the RAS, this is important. You begin to encode the event into your brain as if it were real, and your attention system starts mapping how to make it happen. Similarly, journaling goals daily in a specific, emotionally engaged way reinforces to your brain what it needs to focus on. These simple habits, done consistently, create a feedback loop where attention becomes direction, direction becomes action, and action creates results. One of the most important aspects of training your RAS for wealth is removing distractions. A cluttered mind, scattered focus, and reactive attention will keep your RAS bouncing between survival-level decisions and trivial inputs. Scrolling endlessly on social media, reacting to negative news, or worrying about things beyond your control tells your brain to prioritize fear, comparison, and scarcity. In contrast, when you consciously protect your mental diet, choosing what content to consume, who to listen to, and what to focus on, you're training your RAS to see what truly matters. You become more aware of trends, mentors, habits, and innovations that align with building wealth. Another way to powerfully engage your RAS is through language. The words you use create internal meaning, and meaning drives attention. If you say, I'm broke, your brain hears that and filters the world through that identity. If instead you say, I'm learning to master my finances, even if you're starting with very little, you signal to your brain that financial growth is a priority. The RAS takes that language as instruction and begins tuning your perception to anything that supports that journey. This is how affirmations work, not through magic, but through focus, reinforcement, and attention recalibration. In the context of building wealth, the RAS is your built-in opportunity detector. It doesn't invent luck, but it helps you recognize what's already around you. It doesn't guarantee success, but it increases your chances of making smarter, faster, and more aligned decisions. The key is to train it deliberately. What you tell your mind to focus on consistently, emotionally, and clearly becomes what your life begins to reflect. Dopamine is often misunderstood as simply the chemical of pleasure, but in reality, it plays a far more important role as the brain's driver of motivation and pursuit. It is the neurotransmitter that gives you the desire to act, to chase, to strive, and to continue moving forward toward a goal. In the context of building wealth, dopamine becomes a powerful tool when you learn how to use it properly. Most people unknowingly misuse their dopamine system by becoming addicted to short-term rewards, scrolling social media, impulse buying, or constantly chasing novelty. These actions flood the brain with quick hits of dopamine, but the effects are fleeting and often leave a person feeling drained and less motivated afterward. This cycle traps people in habits that offer temporary satisfaction, but no real progress. On the other hand, if you understand how to harness dopamine for long-term goals, you can train your brain to enjoy the process of wealth building rather than just fantasizing about the end result. One of the most valuable ways to use dopamine as a tool is to break down your financial goals into smaller, actionable steps and then celebrate each micro achievement. The act of completing a meaningful step, like creating a budget, making a sale, investing a small amount, or finishing a course releases a bit of dopamine. When you consciously recognize and reward these moments, even with a mental, well done, or a quick note of progress in your journal, you teach your brain that effort equals reward. Over time, this creates a loop where taking consistent action becomes intrinsically rewarding, not just a means to an end. You become more focused, more driven, and more likely to stick with the habits that actually lead to wealth accumulation. It's essential to shift your dopamine focus from outcome-based gratification to process-based gratification. If you constantly tie your motivation to big outcomes, like hitting 6 figures, buying a car, or getting rich, you put all your dopamine into future peaks. This makes the present moment feel like a burden or something to endure. You begin to hate the work because your brain is only wired to feel good when you arrive. This mindset is fragile and it collapses the moment progress feels slow. But if you train your mind to enjoy the routine, the learning, the small wins, and even the challenges, your dopamine becomes sustainable. You don't need to wait for success to feel motivated. You generate motivation from the act of building itself. Another vital part of managing your dopamine is reducing dependence on external validation. Many people seek rewards in the form of praise, likes, approval, or admiration. While it's natural to enjoy recognition, becoming addicted to it can weaken your internal drive. When you build wealth purely to impress others or prove your worth, your dopamine becomes hijacked by other people's opinions. This leads to burnout, anxiety, and inconsistent focus. By contrast, when you anchor your efforts in internal goals, like becoming free, taking care of your family, or mastering a skill, you reclaim ownership of your dopamine system. You become more stable, focused, and resilient even when external rewards are delayed. Your environment also plays a big role in shaping your dopamine patterns. If you surround yourself with distractions and overstimulation, your brain gets conditioned to expect constant novelty. This makes deep, focused work feel boring or painful. But when you simplify your environment, limit shallow rewards, and create space for clarity and concentration, your dopamine becomes more responsive to meaningful effort. This is why routines like morning goal setting, deep work blocks, regular exercise, and digital detoxes are so powerful. They restore your dopamine sensitivity and train your mind to find pleasure in progress, not just outcomes. In wealth building, this kind of mental conditioning is crucial. The journey is often slow, filled with trial and error, discipline, and delayed results. But when you train your brain to associate action with reward, and when you find joy in the process itself, you become unstoppable. You stop relying on motivation that comes and goes, and instead build a mindset that seeks challenge, growth, and long-term gain. You use dopamine as it was meant to be used, not as a fleeting pleasure, but as a compass that drives you forward. The pursuit becomes fulfilling, and wealth becomes not just a destination, but a byproduct of a well-trained, motivated, and visualization is not just a feel-good exercise or a motivational cliché. It is a neuroscience-backed practice that trains your brain to behave as if your goals are already within reach. When you visualize and experience in rich detail, your brain activates the same neural circuits as it would if you were actually living that experience in real life. This mental rehearsal lays down the blueprint for action, strengthening the neural pathways associated with confidence, focus, and goal-directed behavior. For individuals looking to attract and build wealth, visualization becomes a strategic tool, not a passive wish. But the key to making it effective lies in specificity and consistency. You must go beyond vague images of being rich or living a better life. Your brain doesn't respond to abstract hopes. It responds to vivid, clear, emotionally resonant scenes that feel real and actionable. When you visualize financial success with clarity, such as walking into a room to pitch your business idea, seeing the exact layout of your home office, or imagining logging into your account and seeing it grow, your brain starts mapping out the steps needed to get there. It becomes familiar with the experience and reduces the resistance or anxiety that often comes with taking bold financial action. This sense of familiarity is critical because the brain tends to avoid what feels uncertain or unfamiliar. Visualization transforms the unfamiliar into the expected. So, when you visualize your financial goals repeatedly and in rich sensory detail, your brain starts to accept those outcomes as a part of your identity rather than distant fantasies. Emotion amplifies this process. If your visualizations are dull or mechanical, they won't engage the brain in a meaningful way. But when you attach emotion, confidence, excitement, gratitude, joy, you signal to your nervous system that this vision matters. Emotional involvement increases the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine, which enhance learning and memory. The more emotional charge you bring to your visualization, the more your brain encodes the scene as important. Over time, this can lead to behavioral shifts. You begin to naturally take actions that align with your vision. You may notice new opportunities, act more decisively, speak with more confidence, or stay disciplined with your financial goals. These behavioral shifts are not forced. They emerge from the alignment between your inner mental rehearsals and your outward actions. Another powerful aspect of visualization is how it helps prepare you for setbacks. By mentally rehearsing not only the success but also the challenges, such as dealing with a failed investment, overcoming rejection, or staying committed during dry periods, you equip your brain to remain calm and adaptive in real life. This kind of visualization is called implementation intention. You're not just imagining best-case scenarios, but also training your mind on how to respond to obstacles. This makes you more resilient, less impulsive, and better prepared to handle the psychological ups and downs that often come with money-related decisions. It's also important to incorporate multi-sensory elements into your visualizations. Don't just see the future, hear it, feel it, and sense it. What does your workspace sound like when you're at peak productivity? What sensations do you feel when you sign your first high-paying client or when you give back to your community from your earnings? The more senses you engage, the more immersive the experience becomes, and the more your brain begins to believe it's real. This belief, anchored in repeated mental rehearsal, creates a sense of inevitability. It becomes easier to show up for your goals because your mind has already been there. Visualization should not replace action, but it should precede it. It primes the brain to act with clarity, confidence, and consistency. When paired with strategic planning and disciplined execution, it becomes a powerful accelerator of results. Many of the world's top performers, from athletes to CEOs, use this tool daily, not because they hope it works, but because science shows that it rewires the brain to perform better. If you want to train your mind to attract wealth, you must first show your brain what wealth looks like in your life, clearly, vividly, and emotionally. Only then will your subconscious begin to align your behavior, attention, and energy with that reality. Your environment, both physical and social, plays a critical role in shaping your mindset, behavior, and ultimately your financial outcomes. The brain is a highly adaptive organ, constantly taking in signals from the surroundings and adjusting thoughts, feelings, and actions accordingly. Whether you're aware of it or not, your external environment is feeding information to your subconscious mind all the time. This includes the people you associate with, the type of media you consume, the language spoken around you, and even the organization of your workspace. When you're surrounded by people who complain about money, talk about scarcity, or constantly reinforce limiting beliefs about wealth, your brain absorbs that energy and begins to normalize those ideas. It becomes harder to think independently, dream bigger, or act boldly when your environment signals fear or complacency. To train your mind to attract wealth, you must intentionally design an environment that reinforces abundance, ambition, and growth. This starts with who you surround yourself with. If you're constantly in the company of people who have a growth mindset, take responsibility for their financial futures, and talk about possibilities rather than limitations, your brain begins to mirror those attitudes through a process called social entrainment. Neuroscientific research shows that humans are wired with mirror neurons, which cause us to subconsciously imitate the behaviors and emotional tones of those around us. This is why proximity is power. Simply being near individuals who are financially conscious, disciplined, or entrepreneurial begins to shift your internal beliefs about what's possible for you. It's not just people that influence your mind. Your digital environment also matters. Every social media post, video, podcast, and book you consume either reinforces wealth, building habits, or distracts you from them. If your daily feed is filled with outrage, entertainment, or materialism without context, it's easy to develop distorted views of money and success. You may start comparing yourself, feeling behind, or chasing superficial goals. In contrast, when you fill your mental space with educational content, financial literacy resources, biographies of successful entrepreneurs, or content focused on value creation, you train your brain to seek knowledge, not validation. The type of content you engage with sets the tone for your mental dialogue. If you want to shift your mindset toward wealth, start by curating what enters your mind. Your physical space matters too. A cluttered, chaotic environment creates stress and decreases focus. The brain responds well to order, clarity, and simplicity. When your workspace is clean, organized, and designed with intention, it tells your nervous system that you are in control, capable, and prepared. This state of control boosts dopamine levels and promotes a sense of readiness for focused work. Something as simple as creating a dedicated financial corner, a place where you journal, study investments, or plan your goals, sends a clear signal to your brain. This is where I grow my wealth. These visual cues serve as environmental triggers that reinforce the identity of someone who is intentional with money and future focused. Your habits are also a reflection of your environment. For example, if you leave your phone next to your bed, you're more likely to start your day with distractions. But if you place a goal journal or a financial book nearby, you're more likely to begin the day with purpose. These small environmental changes may seem trivial, but over time, they create significant shifts in behavior. Habits are not just a matter of willpower, they're deeply tied to context. By changing the context, you make good habits easier and bad habits harder. Ultimately, your environment should be a tool that supports the version of yourself you are trying to become. If you want to be someone who builds wealth, then everything around you should reflect that vision. From the conversations you have, to the spaces you occupy, to the messages you feed your mind. This doesn't require luxury or perfection. It requires intention. When you take control of your environment, you take control of the signals your brain receives every day. And when those signals are aligned with growth, discipline, and abundance, your mind begins to attract the thoughts, habits, and decisions that create lasting wealth. One of the most underestimated aspects of wealth creation is the development of emotional resilience and a stable nervous system. While strategies, habits, and mindset are essential, none of them can be sustained over the long term without emotional regulation. Your nervous system governs how you respond to stress, uncertainty, failure, and even success. It influences your decision-making, your risk tolerance, and your capacity to stay consistent in the face of obstacles. In the context of wealth building, the journey is rarely linear. You will face financial losses, unexpected challenges, slow progress, and moments of deep self-doubt. Without a well-regulated nervous system, these moments can trigger impulsive reactions, quitting too early, overspending out of stress, chasing risky investments, or avoiding important decisions altogether. At the biological level, your nervous system operates through two primary branches, the sympathetic fight or flight and the parasympathetic Z rest and digest. When you are constantly stressed, overwhelmed, or in a reactive state, your sympathetic nervous system dominates. This state is useful for short-term survival but detrimental for long-term thinking. In this mode, your brain prioritizes immediate comfort and safety, making it difficult to delay gratification, take calculated risks, or focus deeply. You become emotionally volatile, easily distracted, and prone to scarcity-based thinking. These are the exact mental states that push people away from wise financial choices. Building wealth requires the opposite, the ability to pause, reflect, make strategic decisions, and remain committed despite discomfort. This is where nervous system regulation becomes a foundational practice. Techniques like deep breathing, meditation, cold exposure, and structured exercise routines are not just wellness trends. They are physiological tools to return the nervous system to balance. When practiced regularly, they help the brain shift from a reactive to a responsive mode. For instance, slow diaphragmatic breathing activates the vagus nerve, which helps engage the parasympathetic state. In this state, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thinking, planning, and impulse control, comes online more effectively. You become more capable of assessing situations objectively, making data-driven choices, and staying calm during market fluctuations or business challenges. Over time, this kind of internal stability becomes a competitive advantage. You are less shaken by external events, which means you make better decisions, take smarter risks, and recover faster from setbacks. Journaling also supports nervous system regulation by helping you process emotions and reframe limiting beliefs. When you write about financial fears or frustrations, you bring unconscious stressors into conscious awareness. This reduces their emotional charge and allows you to reframe the narrative. For example, instead of thinking, "I failed at this investment," you can reframe it as, "I learned a valuable lesson that will improve my strategy moving forward." This shift in interpretation is powerful. It teaches your brain that setbacks are not threats, but opportunities for growth. The more often you train your mind to respond instead of react, the more emotionally resilient you become, and emotional resilience is what keeps you moving when motivation fades. Sleep, nutrition, and hydration also directly affect nervous system function. Chronic sleep deprivation reduces willpower and increases impulsive decision-making. Poor nutrition can lead to energy crashes and mood swings that distort your financial perspective. Hydration affects cognitive clarity. These basic physical habits are not just health recommendations, they are foundational practices for a strong, wealth-oriented mind. If your brain is foggy, fatigued, or chemically imbalanced, no amount of goal setting or visualization can override that. To attract and sustain wealth, your body must be a support system, not a source of distraction or dysfunction. Finally, your relationship with uncertainty must evolve. Most people avoid financial growth simply because it involves unknowns. But when you train your nervous system to tolerate discomfort and stay grounded during uncertainty, you increase your capacity for success. Wealth does not come from staying safe. It comes from learning how to stay centered while moving through risk and change. The stronger your nervous system, the more flexible your responses become, and the more opportunities you're able to pursue without being paralyzed by fear. In the long run, wealth flows to those who are calm under pressure, clear under chaos, and steady in the face of stress, not because they never feel fear, but because they've trained themselves to move forward regardless.